Hey, this is Daniel and Valerie. And hello. And this is Shifting Perspectives, and we're doing a little bit differently since we're on the road right now. We're in Durango, Colorado, and we're on our little Casita Encantada little camper, 15-foot camper. So we're coming to you live, and we're going to talk about how to effectively resolve an argument. Mm-hmm. And we both were kind of, how do we do that? Because we don't really have arguments.
No.
And but if I think back in my life, I remember, yeah, there were definitely arguments. And the way that I usually resolve them, I didn't actually heal them, but I resolve them by being stronger intellectually or louder. And that's what we normally do, is what we present a stronger case against that person to make ourselves right. And building that stronger case, it just kind of pushes that person down, because we don't like to be pushed down the other way. So we do whatever we can to push the other person down and get louder. And I remember I was in a relationship, and I'm sure I told the story before, but after one of our first arguments, and I was kind of going into the realm of something completely new. I didn't know any of this whole communication and relationship dynamics and anything. So when she said, well, Daniel, if you're pissed at me, it's your shit to look at. And that just really kind of rocked my world, but it intrigued me at the same time. Like maybe I could become a better person and better in relationship if this is true. Maybe there's some things that I don't know, which is highly likely. So we're gonna talk about how, sort of stage by stage, how you can resolve an argument. So let's say that this is really new to you and you don't know what it even feels like not to be in a relationship where there is no argument. And just want to let you know that just because there's no argument doesn't mean there's not any upsets. Doesn't mean there's not any triggers or any hurt feelings.
Yeah, that does happen.
Yeah. We get hurt feelings still, because inside of us are, what I'm learning so much from Joe Dispenza and other people, that we have chemical reactions that sometimes we can't stop. And it's a known chemical response that's in there already in my brain. So even though I want to have not have any arguments with Valerie, because she's an amazing woman and a great partner, still there's a chemical reaction that happens. Now, I don't want to blame it all on some chemical reaction, but I'm just saying that there are responses that I get my feelings hurt, or I'll say things in a certain way that affects Valerie. All right, so taking from the top, let's say that this is completely new to you. How do you go from having an argument and just having just a brick wall? Like, let's say that you get into an argument and it's just, she's saying that she needs this from you, and you're like, but I give this to you and I give this to you over and over again. I can't believe that, what am I supposed to do? It could be that the way that you're giving it to her, or the way that you're saying I'm sorry, or the way from either of you saying, well, this is his thing or this is her thing, and so I've just got to be, no, it's not like that. It's about healing that and integrating that within your relationship, that you can start showing up to her differently than every other man has, that you can show up to him differently than every other woman has, so that he doesn't have to keep himself in protection all the time. So just practicing that, you start getting better and better at it. And then you start getting to the next stage, which to me feels like, there's something coming up, some energy coming up. And you say, I would say, Valerie, when you said that thing before, it was totally not anything wrong with what you said, but what it caused me a huge trigger. I got totally triggered in that. You know which one we're talking about. But I got completely triggered, and it's like she did nothing, but I got triggered, and I had to just get it out. Okay, I'm totally triggered about this. And then we talked about it. And Valerie and I were talking about this, like, how do we resolve arguments? And when you've not had an argument for so long, you kind of go, wow, like, how do but it's just talking, like Valerie said, it's just communicating about it, having a discussion about it, and staying away from as much as you can, blaming this other person. Well, you know, when you do this thing, and then because you know what the other person's going to do. Well, yeah, but you do this too, which is totally true. If you do one thing to that person, they probably do the same thing to you. It goes back and forth. But that's why you guys are connected in this way. That's why you can both heal and integrate what brought all this stuff up.
Now I have something to add. Sometimes when an argument is happening, we get triggered, like almost like a PTSD response, and there's fight, flight, and freeze. And of course, when it's fight, you want to shout back, and the shouting and the arguing happens where both people want to be right. Like flight, you leave the room, go into another room, run away, get in your car, go somewhere. And freeze is something that happens to me a lot. Like I freeze, I have nothing to say, and literally my body goes into a frozen mode. And sometimes when that happens, we need to take a breath and literally shake it off. Literally the same way that a dog shakes off. Shake it off, take a deep breath, recenter, and then come back and respond in a way that's not heightened, that's not accusatory.
We worked on that word.
Something where it can be in discussion mode, and really loving discussion, because this is the person you love, and that you're tender with, like kind of like we laugh because we talk about talking to each other the way we would to old grandma or grandpa. And we would be very sweet and understanding, and really try to understand their point of view. And
yeah, that's one that really I want to remember so much, is that what if she was my grandma, my little grandma, or a little child? But I don't, but you could get into that, like, what we say, like you could use that in a manipulative way or something, like if they're like you treat them like a little child.
Yeah, it can be condescending.
Condescending, that's the word. But if you treat them like your great grandmother, and she's feeble, and she's in the house, and you want to talk to her very gently, because she thinks that she's probably not. She's probably a badass. You just talk tone. Is it okay if I do this, or I'm going to do this, and kind of thing. So it's really in the tone that you speak to each other. And like Valerie's saying, when you do have some kind of a trigger or an upset, a trigger could be sadness or anger or some kind of emotion, and usually the trigger is some kind of anger, because there's something behind it. But when you have that trigger and you have some energy behind it, really best if you settle yourself back down. So here's like the next stage of this. You find what your theme is. This me or makes me feel this way. And you down and find out what your theme has been in your life. And what I did, I wrote myself a note on my phone and said, Daniel, this is your theme. In case of emergency, when you're triggered, read this. And then what I did is I listed all my triggers and what the themes and the emotions were, so that I could read it from the clip. This is your shit to look at. And you start to look at, okay, why did I just got triggered right here? Where is this coming from? And you start to it really honestly takes about 2 or 3 minutes just to do a little discovery in there. Oh, and then once you get used to it, you say, oh, yep, that's that one right there. And then this is what takes a lot of guts, especially for guys, is to admit that you're wrong, is to go to her or him and say, I'm sorry. This was my trigger. This is what came up. Yes, it was something that you did or said, but you aren't the cause of the trigger. And you know what happens when you start to resolve these arguments until they're less and less arguments and more discovery and more healing integration? your relationship comes closer and closer and closer, like it never could have before. Because do you imagine that you're in relationship, with all these different partners until you met this one, and you've been protecting yourself with these walls of resentment and regret and all these things. And now you're finally looking at your own stuff, looking at doing your own inner work about your things. And now you're saying, wow, I see myself more clear than I ever have. And someone gets to see me more clear than anyone ever has. And then you get into a more intimate relationship than you've ever been
Yeah.
in. Mm.
It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time, and it takes the consciousness to come out of the sulky the sulky part of a trigger
Victim,
or
yeah.
argument where the walls come up and you're both silent and you kind of don't talk to each other for a few minutes. And then somebody comes up and breaks that silence.
Yeah.
And say, let's talk this through. And then it's just coming from a really adult and conscious place.
Like devoted to your relationship.
Yeah, it's so important. So important. And also dropping the need to be right. That's so important, because there's so many different views. Two people can look out the same window and see different things outside the window.
Yeah.
And there are many different views. I like to think that there's side A, side B, and the truth in between. So there's so many different viewpoints, and they're all valid. Everything is valid. All feelings are valid.
Yeah, and along with that is anything that you think is true is just a belief. If you can just remember that what you think about this person, or that you're right and they're wrong, you don't really, all you have is one perspective from your line of sight, from your understanding, from your conditioning. And even in that, you have a very limited view of the world. If you kind of look at it from even a metaphysical kind of way, you don't know what's all involved in all that's happening here. So what I'm saying is that when you think that you know the truth, just be careful with that. Just, you have your own perspective and they have their own perspective. And usually what happens is when you start to really talk about things, you have your way. We were just thinking about putting this tile stuff on the wall. Valerie wants it up high, I want it down low. Maybe if we talk about it, that we'll get to a high and low, that we'll both get our needs met, and it'll be awesome. But that's usually what happens, is that, we'll have different ideas about something, but we'll have a little discussion. Hey, what do you think about this? And then boom, there's something better.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The last part I just want to touch on is this is a choice for you. It's a choice to do something completely different than what your mind is telling you to do. Your mind may be resistant and saying, I don't know how to do this. Well, it's not supposed to. You've never been trained this. But you know people that know how to do this, that do this in a relationship. And we're not anybody special. We've just been working on doing our inner work and doing our process and, learning how to do this. And we've been doing it for years. So it's not unbelievable that someone would be in a relationship that you just don't argue. Yes, like we said, you do have little upsets, but you don't yell at each other and get into an argument and throw things around like I used to. But I just didn't have the tools of the training for it. But I want to let you know that it doesn't take a special person, that you're a saint, that you're an angel, that you never do anything wrong, you never use any cuss words or anything like that. It's not that kind of thing. It's just that you want to be more conscious and aware and more intelligent in your relationship. It's not perfect. We're moving towards that. But for the most part, our days together are filled with happiness and joy and fun, and we work really well together. And that's because of all the relationships that led us to this place, and the work that we do in our relationship now.
That's it.
That's it. All right. Thank you
Thank
from
you.
Colorado. We'll see you back in Sedona in about a week. All right.